The Shyamalan Cinematic Universe. The theory says several of M. Night's movies are all tied together in one big, weird, twisty universe. Not just the obvious ones either. Unbreakable, Split, and Glass, those are already confirmed. Glass smashes them all together, sticks David Dunn in a room with Kevin Wendell Crumb and Elijah Price, and just lets it all go off the rails. But fans didn't stop there. They've started dragging newer films into the club too. Trap is the latest suspect, with people pointing out its vibes, characters, and themes like they're matching fingerprints at a crime scene. There's even talk that M. Night's creepy little cameo in Old might be the exact same dude from his other movies, which would connect that Beach of Doom to the universe too. And it gets better. Color coding. David's green, Kevin's yellow, Elijah's purple. It's like superhero Crayola. The colors keep showing up like Easter eggs painted by a deeply anxious art teacher. The whole thing feels like a slow burn Marvel style situation, except instead of Iron Man, it's a guy who can bench press a car and get sad in the rain. And apparently Kevin's character was dreamt up during Unbreakable. That's either long-term planning or clairvoyance. Dr. Staple has superpowers. Some fans think Dr. Ellie Staple isn't just a clever psychiatrist with a bad vibe. They think she's got actual powers. The theory builds off her creepy role in Glass, where she's exposed as part of a shady group called the Black Clover Society, whose full-time gig is tracking down people with super abilities and shutting them down. That's already suspicious. But then, she starts talking to the Horde, and suddenly even Kevin's more dangerous personalities start second-guessing themselves. That kind of mind control has people side-eyeing her like she's got some psychic Jedi-level manipulation ability. One theory claims she can straight up implant doubt so deeply, it rewrites reality for her victims. That would explain how she gets killers to sit still and question their life choices just by talking. And her role feels too precise to be random. David Dunn is invincible, Elijah is breakable but brilliant, and Kevin is strength gone wild. Staple might be their mirror, the force that cancels them all out. She even customizes each cell in the institution to weaken them like it's supervillain Pinterest. Lights for Kevin, water for David, too specific to be normal. Fans say that kind of control doesn't come standard. By the way, if you guys like movie content like this, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, the aliens are actually demons. Fans of Signs love pointing out that the so-called alien invasion plays a lot more like a spiritual ambush. Shyamalan even described the film as a Dracula movie in disguise, which is definitely not how people usually talk about UFOs. One of the biggest clues is the aliens' bizarre weakness: water. Not high-tech weapons, not gamma rays, just plain old water. That makes a lot more sense if the invaders aren't aliens at all, but demons reacting to something holy. Supporters say it's no accident the water is left around the house by a girl who's obsessed with its purity. Then there's the priest storyline, a man who's lost his faith, wrestling with grief, forced to confront a force of evil that reawakens his belief. That's not classic science fiction, that's a sermon with jump scares. The creatures don't use spaceships or lasers, they stalk like demons, poison like demons, and act like nightmares with an attitude. Some even claim their legs look like hooves, which doesn't exactly scream Martian. The whole setup leans harder into spiritual symbolism than alien invasion cliches. Everything from the fear to the redemption arc screams that this was about the soul. Dunn's showdown with the beast was foreshadowed in Unbreakable. Way back in Unbreakable, there's a comic that young Elijah gets, his very first limited edition one, and on the cover is a green-suited hero fighting some kind of feral, beast-like villain. Yeah, the colors match up. David's green, the beast leans yellow and dark. That cover wasn't random. Then Elijah's mom drops a line about the comic having a surprise ending. At first it just feels like mom talk, but it ends up sounding like a whisper from the future, setting up the final fight way down the road in Glass. There's another moment where a panel in Elijah's comic gallery shows a monster with glowing red eyes locked in combat with a superhero. The whole thing mirrors the beast's design in Split, like someone snuck in a storyboard 10 years early. And when Elijah lays out his theory of real-world heroes and villains, it doesn't feel like a one-and-done origin story. It plays like the first act of a larger myth. That idea, that David's story was always building toward a battle with something monstrous, feels baked into the foundation. Fans think the pieces weren't added later. They were already on the board, waiting for the game to start. M. Night plays the same characters across all of his cameos. The idea is that Shyamalan has been playing the same guy over and over, just living his strange little life across multiple timelines. In Unbreakable, he shows up as a sketchy stadium drug dealer. Fast forward to Split, and now he's Jai, a building tech or landlord type. Then in Glass, he's still Jai, and even references being that same guy David Dunn caught years ago. That's not coincidence, that's a confirmed through line. So now fans are starting to comb back through through the rest of his films asking, wait, was he always this dude? He appears in The Sixth Sense, Signs, The Village, Lady in the Water, and each time it's someone just around. Never too involved, never too far away. Some think he's a kind of meta-observer in his own universe, like a director who refuses to stay behind the camera and keeps wandering onto the set. The fact he wrote Jai's character across 3 separate films and kept him consistent means it's not a stretch to think others could connect too. It's the most low-key cinematic crossover hiding in plain sight. Cooper has superpowers. In Trap, Cooper Abbott starts off as a mild-mannered dad until he's revealed as a serial killer operating under the name The Butcher. That twist is wild enough, but what really grabbed fans is how impossible he is to stop. He's drugged, chased, locked inside a stadium crawling with police, and somehow still manages to manipulate, scheme, and survive. Supporters of the powers theory say that level of survival under pressure feels beyond human. One fan pointed out how easily he breaks metal and moves bodies. Not exactly average firefighter strength. Others see his adaptability as a kind of super instinct, always one step ahead, thinking through chaos like it's a game he's already won. Then there's the tone of the film, stylized and heightened, like reality's been turned up just enough to suggest something more. Shyamalan's past characters with powers often hide in plain sight, and Cooper fits that mold perfectly. The theory claims he's more than clever, he's literally enhanced. Maybe not flying or bending steel, but stronger, smarter, and harder to kill than he should be. If this is the same world as Unbreakable or Split, Cooper's a new kind of villain, wearing a dad mask. The grandparents are off their meds. In The Visit, the 2 creepy old people are escaped patients from a psychiatric hospital who murdered the actual grandpa and grandma and just slid into their lives like it was a weekend Airbnb. From the moment the kids arrive, things start going sideways fast. Nana's crawling around at night, scratching walls with zero shame, and throwing up like she's in a haunted version of a frat party. Pop is hiding dirty diapers in the shed and punching strangers at the mall because he thinks they're government spies. The movie even uses the term sundowning, a real symptom of dementia and related illnesses, where people become more confused and erratic at night, and it was almost the original title of the film. That wasn't a throwaway line. It was baked into the script, and Pop flat out tells the kids that Doris suffers from it. Everything about their behavior lines up with untreated psychosis, paranoia, and degenerative mental illness. There's nothing magical or cursed about it. These aren't monsters. They're 2 very unwell people off their medication, pretending to be sweet grandparents while completely falling apart. Casey is one of Kevin's personalities. Some fans believe Casey Cook from Split is actually one of Kevin's hidden alters. In the opening scene, Kevin sprays 2 girls unconscious but leaves Casey untouched, even though she's right there. That's the moment many viewers locked into the theory. They argue it was recognition. Kevin didn't attack Casey because she wasn't a separate person. She was already inside. Then there's the name detail. Kevin Crumb has the initials, KC. That kind of wordplay has Shyamalan's fingerprints all over it. The flashbacks don't help either. Casey's childhood is filled with trauma, abuse, isolation, the very ingredients that forged Kevin's fragmented mind. It makes her feel like another branch of his psyche, not just a character who wandered into the basement. And then there's the way the camera lingers on her more than the others. Kevin's personalities talk around her. Some ignore her entirely. The Beast lets her live because she's pure, but to some fans, that's code for something deeper. She's not just sympathetic, she's part of him. Created in pain, embedded in the system, not a final girl, but a forgotten voice waiting to take control. The Happening is a prequel to After Earth. According to some fans, the mass suicide epidemic in The Happening was the beginning of Earth's slow rejection of humanity. In that movie, Plant a Life suddenly evolves to release neurotoxins that force people to take their own lives. It's brutal, it's sudden, and most importantly, it's nature striking back. The film ends with the crisis fading, but not disappearing. A final news broadcast teases a new outbreak overseas. Supporters of the prequel theory argue that's the real warning shot. Fast forward to After Earth, and humans have fully evacuated the planet following an environmental catastrophe. Earth's now a feral wasteland swarming with aggressive creatures and deadly terrain. The connection? Same director, similar themes, and an identical through line. Humans damage nature, nature strikes back, humanity retreats. The timeline works if you see The Happening as the first flare-up, the beginning of Earth's immune response. Over time, the toxins and environmental shifts keep escalating until survival becomes impossible. After Earth never says exactly what happened, just that Earth forced humans to leave. Fans think The Happening is the first chapter in that silent war, where nature decides it's done negotiating. The Village is set in the Unbreakable universe. Fans who believe this theory say the Village is part of the same world as Unbreakable, just tucked into a hidden corner. Ivy Walker is their first clue. She's blind, yes, but she picks up on things others miss. Her senses are dialed up beyond what seems normal. Some even say she can sense emotions or intentions. gifts, like seeing people's colors without sight. That lines up with how Unbreakable characters get their powers through trauma. David Dunn survives disasters, Kevin splits into alters, and Ivy loses her vision and grows something else in its place. Then there's Noah Percy, a disabled man who suddenly becomes an aggressive, precise hunter after an emotional break. The way he tracks, the intensity of his movement, feels less like a lost boy and more like a disturbed version of the Beast. On top of that, the whole village itself is about secrets. Adults hiding the real world, burying truth, creating myths to suppress knowledge. That's not too far off from Unbreakable's obsession with hidden identities and buried potential. The tone fits, the trauma fits, and Shyamalan's known for hiding connections until he's ready. All M. Night movies are from a comic book written by Cole. Some fans argue that Cole Sear, the ghost-seeing boy from The Sixth Sense, is documenting them all along. The theory goes that after surviving his traumatic childhood, Cole begins channeling the stories of the spirits he encounters into comics, stylized mythic tales inspired by real pain. Unbreakable becomes the first example, a comic book origin story, complete with archetypes, structure, and moral codes. Supporters say that's not coincidence, it's Cole's work, fictionalizing the lives and deaths of the lost. David Dunn, the reluctant hero, is exactly the kind of figure a kid with a gift for sensing unresolved souls might imagine. The Beast Elijah, the Narf from Lady in the Water, even the haunted family in The Visit, all interpreted as reworked versions of spirits Cole once encountered. Instead of therapy, he creates narratives where fear becomes monsters, trauma becomes powers, and people find meaning in their pain. The Sixth Sense is the real world, and everything after is Cole's comic book, a universe of ghost echoes reimagined as mythology. Fans believe each movie's stylized tone and structure backs it up. Cole sees dead people. Then, he tells their stories. Casey is a powerful empath. Casey Cook doesn't throw punches, but her power is emotional. Fans believe her trauma-hardened empathy is what sets her apart in Split. She's not just another scared girl in a locked room. From the beginning, she reads Kevin's fractured personalities like she's flipping pages in a familiar book. She notices the shifts, who's in control, what they want, what they fear, and she adapts. Her past abuse, shown through brutal flashbacks, hasn't broken her. It's sharpened her instincts. When the Beast finally arrives, roaring and tearing through everything, he stops cold at the sight of her scars. Not because he's merciful, but because he recognizes something, suffering. He calls her pure. She's the only one he spares, not because she's lucky, but because she understands him in a way no one else does. That moment isn't random. It's the culmination of every look, every measured response, every time she didn't scream or beg. She doesn't manipulate him, she connects. That's what the theory argues. She's not telepathic, she's deeply attuned, a survivor who turned pain into perception. Her power isn't in what she says, it's in what she sees, what she feels, and what she refuses to become. The critic in Lady in the Water is a member of the Horde. Supporters of this theory think the arrogant film critic Farber is a hidden piece of Kevin Wendell Crumb's fractured mind. In Lady in the Water, Farber's entire existence revolves around story logic. He analyzes narrative tropes, predicts character arcs, and smugly explains how movies work, until he gets mauled by a grass-covered wolf creature, which he fails to see coming. That's where fans start connecting dots. In Splitting Glass, Kevin's personalities include a wide spectrum, some nurturing, some monstrous, some intellectual. A few viewers argue there's room in that mental roster for a critic-type alter, someone obsessive about story structure who thinks he's above danger because he's read the script in his head. Farber fits the bill. His death in Lady in the Water is treated like a punchline. But if these films share a universe, it might be more like a transformation. The Horde houses over 20 identities, sliding in a film-obsessed persona, possibly reborn from someone who once believed in rules, would be a Shyamalan kind of twist. If Farber didn't survive, maybe he didn't disappear. Maybe he got absorbed into the story. The meaning of the color red. The color red appears across many of M. Night Shyamalan's films, and fans of this theory argue it means the supernatural is near. In The Sixth Sense, red is a confirmed symbol. A red balloon, a red doorknob, a red sweater, all appear when the spirit world overlaps with the real one. The director himself has said red signals a tainted element, something real touched by the otherworldly. Supporters of this idea say red doesn't stop there. In The Village, red is banned, feared, because it supposedly attracts the creatures. In Unbreakable, while red isn't dominant, characters are marked by symbolic colors, green for the hero, purple for the villain. And some some fans think bursts of red may signal emotional or supernatural tension. The idea? Color is a code. The theory builds like this. Shyamalan uses color, especially red, as a visual whisper. When it shows up, something uncanny, dangerous, or beyond comprehension might be about to enter the scene. It's a signal, a flare, a warning. While only The Sixth Sense offers explicit confirmation of this, fans spot echoes throughout his work. And taken together, these echoes suggest a kind of secret language. Red equals crossing over. Red equals the veil thinning. Red equals pay attention. It's not canon, but it's a lens. And once you start watching for it, it's hard not to see. The Village is about the anti-vaccine movement. Some fans argue that The Village is an allegory for medical distrust. The entire community in the film is built on isolation. The elders have walled themselves off from the modern world using lies and fabricated monsters to keep people from leaving. That includes cutting off access to medicine. When a child falls ill, Lucius tries to get permission to fetch help from the outside, but he's denied. That moment, choosing ideology over survival, is a core pillar of the theory. Supporters see the elders as stand-ins for anti-vaccine leaders, educated people who intentionally reject modern treatment out of fear and principle. Their reasoning? The towns are evil, corrupt, dangerous, the same way some groups paint healthcare systems as untrustworthy or harmful. Even when people suffer, they cling to belief. The creatures in the woods, used to scare people into compliance, are symbolic of misinformation or myth used to control. No medicine, no outside aid, just a pure way of life that crumbles when tested. The theory frames the village as a portrait of what happens when fear wins over facts and how denying help in the name of purity can quietly kill. Ghosts are drawn to Cole's trauma. In The Sixth Sense, Cole isn't just a kid who sees ghosts, he's haunted by them. But some fans argue it's not random. They believe the spirits are actively drawn to Cole's emotional wounds. He's isolated, anxious, and burdened by secrets he can't share. That kind of vulnerability, supporters say, acts like a signal flare in the supernatural world. Every ghost Cole sees has suffered some kind of traumatic death, accidents, violence, sudden endings, and all of them come to him for help. The theory argues that Cole's trauma makes him more than just a passive receiver. He's a magnet. Ghost story traditions often connect emotional trauma to spiritual disturbances, and Cole fits that pattern exactly. His fear may be what lets them find him in the first place. Even the film's rules back it up. Ghosts don't know they're dead, but they seek closure. Cole, carrying pain of his own, becomes the one person they can reach. He's emotionally tuned to the suffering of others, living or dead. His trauma is the source of the haunting. Creatures in the village are real. Fans who push this theory say the twist, that the monsters are fake, doesn't tell the whole story. Yes, the elders admit to wearing costumes to scare people into staying put, but the film never shows who's behind every creature sighting. Some encounters feel too visceral, too unpredictable, like something more is lurking just beyond the lies. A few attacks happen off-screen or in ways the timeline doesn't cleanly explain. Supporters argue those moments leave the door cracked open for something real. Then there's the symbolism. The village runs on fear, color-coded rituals, forbidden woods, whispered legends, and some fans believe that kind of fear can manifest into something tangible. Trauma's buried, violence is denied, and everyone pretends the world outside doesn't exist. In that stew of secrecy and repression, the monsters take on weight. Maybe not just costumes, but something spiritual or psychological made flesh. The elders may think they invented the creatures, but what if they didn't? What if they summoned them? In a place built on denial and grief, fear doesn't need claws to be real, but sometimes it grows them anyway. Lady in the Water is about the power of storytelling. From the start, the movie dives into myth with an animated fable about sea creatures called narfs, laying out a bedtime story framework right there on screen. Then it throws us into a modern apartment complex where a literal narf named Story shows up in the pool. Her entire purpose is to find a writer whose future work will influence humanity. That's not subtle. The writer is key to saving the world, and his words haven't even been written yet. Inside the building, the residents start realizing they're playing roles from that myth: guardian, healer, guild, and they're forced to think like characters in a story to help story return. It's storytelling inside storytelling, with the rules of a fairy tale shaping their real decisions. Even the origin of the film proves the point. It came from a bedtime story Shyamalan told his kids. Everything from the plot to the character arcs hinges on believing in the narrative, participating in it, and being changed by it. It's not about magic spells or fantasy creatures. It's about what happens when people choose to live as if stories actually matter. If you enjoyed this, I post movie content a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.